Spence. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. It is Super Bowl week. So glad for you guys to be here. This is the show that values time and puts God first. So let's get started. It is Super Bowl week, but we just had the biggest news in all of sports happened over the weekend on a Saturday night. You were probably out enjoying yourself, doing something, and then out of nowhere, you learned Luka Doncic was being traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first-round draft pick. Whew, there's a lot to unpack here. So, again, and when these things kind of happen, they're all really surreal at first, even smaller trades, which we're going to get into later in the show. But it all feels surreal the first 24 to 48 hours after a star-level player or higher gets traded. So when you add in the fact Luka Doncic, who to some people will argue he is the best, one of the two best, one of the three best players in the league, it adds to that. And I want to take a couple different perspectives looking at this trade, and I think they're the more uncommon perspectives. I want to look at the player side of it. I want to look at the ownership side of it. And I want to look at the fan side of it. So let's start with the player side of it. And I think this is the easier one to explain, the easier one to go over. And that is, Luka is incredible. We all know that. He's coming off a season in which he just took the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals. Yes, there's some questions and concerns about his weight, which we're finding out since the trade are apparently even more prevalent than Dallas ever let on. You know, that they're actually really concerned about his weight and that it's a bigger issue than we initially thought. But he's an all-time great talent, arguably the best offensive player in the sport. He just led the NBA in scoring. All of that stuff is 1,000% true. You can't take it away from him. There's also the perspective of the other guy in this trade who I feel like we're downplaying a lot. Anthony Davis is not just a throw-in. Anthony Davis is not just a include or you got to get something back piece. Anthony Davis is such a great player. 6 years ago, he was in a trade like this, except he was the superstar being traded to another team. AD is a all-time two-way player. Great offensively, great defensively. All we've heard this year and all we've heard for the past year and a half, 2 years is, wow, how has he never won a defensive player of the year? He's a guy that can get you 25 to 30 points. He can get you several blocks, be an anchor on defense. He is a great player in his own right. But he is also 32. Which is why I think a lot of people have issue with this of why are we trading a 32 or 25-year-old in Luka Doncic for a 32-year-old in Anthony Davis. But again, I don't want to, just for the sense of making a point or sounding clever or to be witty, I don't want to downplay the level of player that Anthony Davis is. He's great. All-timer. He's a champion. Was great for the Lakers while he was there. You know, all that stuff is true. Luka is, however, and this is where we're going to kind of we're going to transition from player into ownership. Luka's a more unique player. We will, with all due respect to Anthony Davis, we will see other great two-way players, especially at big men. We will see other guys who come in this league, average 24, 25 a game, can get you multiple blocks, be great defensively. That's a thing we've seen before. Luka was new. Luka came into the league, and yeah, you could say, oh, it's just an offensive powerhouse. We've seen it before. But the way he scored was different. The way he passed was different. If we had never seen LeBron James, we would say it's totally unique. To be that great, that young, is something only a handful of guys ever have had the privilege of saying, that's who I am. I'm already an all-NBA level guy, and I'm 20 years old. And Luka's accomplishments, think of it this, his accomplishments are as good as anybody in the league. 5 times first team All-NBA. There's only 4 other players who have that kind of that on their resume. Harden has it. Giannis has it. Steph doesn't have it. LeBron obviously has it. And KD. Steph Curry, one of the greatest players, maybe 10, 11 greatest players we've ever seen. He doesn't have any first-team All-NBAs. Only 5 dudes actively. Kawhi Leonard, a guy who obviously has injury concerns, but a guy who's playing, we all acknowledge, one of the best in the league. He doesn't have 5 first-team All-NBAs. Luka is truly a unique player in terms of how great he was at so young, the accolades and resumes that he has already built up. And again, this is, go listen to the group chat podcast. He's not a losing player. This is not a guy who is, Tony made this point, he's not a guy who puts up numbers and the team can't win. Or he's not a guy who puts up numbers, but there's no success behind it. He is a 5-time first-team All-NBA. His team just went to the finals. And it's a little weird from an organizational standpoint because the Mavs just made all these moves for Luka. They just signed Kyrie or traded for Kyrie a year and a half ago. They brought in more defensive guys because they know he's not the greatest defensive player. And I want to say this before we transition to ownership. If anyone is productive, it's okay if it looks different, even if it's a different you don't like. If someone is productive, if someone gets their job done, someone performs at a high end in whatever field they are in, it's okay if it looks different, even if that different makes you uncomfortable. Is Luka bigger and maybe doesn't have the traditional NBA body of a Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron, or some of these other super athletes you see come out of college? Yeah, that's 1,000% correct. You know who also doesn't have a crazy body? Try the guy playing in the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes. Oh, well, that's not fair. That's a different sport. Okay, try the guy who's unanimously considered the best player in the sport, Nikola Jokic. Jokic doesn't have a crazy physique. Giannis does, but Jokic is better than Giannis. Embiid, yes, he's suffered injuries, and that's where the concern is. But Embiid's never had a crazy body. James Harden, who's got multiple scoring titles, has been an MVP in this league, where you could argue should have a championship if not for one of the greatest dynasties we've ever seen in sports in the Golden State Warriors. He's never had a crazy body. So just because you're not comfortable with it doesn't mean we should get to detract from how it looks. Luka has been dominant. Luka has been an outstanding NBA player. Does he hold a few more pounds than he probably wish? Yeah, sure. But again, he just got to the finals. He's as accomplished as anyone in terms of an individual basis up to this stage of his career. And I do mean anyone. Put LeBron, Kobe, Michael, anyone in the history of the NBA. 5 first-team All-NBAs in your first 7 years. Like, he's done it all from an individual perspective. But now let's go to ownership. And I think this is where it gets tricky. There's been this almost through line. As more money comes into sports, the athletes are paid more. We talked about this yesterday again on group chat. Kobe Bryant in 2008-2009 made $20 million. And that was the most in the NBA. And then when he got his legacy deal, which was those last 2 years of his contract, even though he had already torn his Achilles and we all knew he was no longer the same player that he once was, that was $250. And everybody went crazy. How could you pay that much money? Oh my gosh. Guys have increasingly earned more and more and more. There is now, it adds to, unfortunately, the devaluing of the max or supermax contracts because almost every player or every team has a player making $30+ million a year. The Hornets are no good. LaMelo's got a max contract. They just re-signed Miles Bridges, even with off the field, off the court issues. Everybody's making beyond life-changing money. And as we get into renegotiating and how much more money is going to be available and how much money is coming in, you might say, oh, it's just more and more money coming in, so of course the guys are going to make more and more. But as these billionaires are sitting around and they're thinking, I got to pay Luka Doncic how much? In Philly, we see it in Philly, they're already stressing. They just paid Joel Embiid how much? Almost $70 million a year on a 3-year deal. And now Luka's coming up where I got to pay him 5 years, almost $400 million. Like, at some point, these owners are going to look at this and go, I don't want to write these insane checks for a guy I don't feel like is insanely committed. Yes, you're talented. Yes, you're an all-world NBA player. But if I'm paying you $50, $60, $70 million a year, I also want you to be an all-world employee. I do want not to demonize the position, but I do want somewhat of a yes man. I want someone who's going to be there for the public events. I want someone who's going to be there and rep the logo on their shirt. I want someone who's going to be for the company and is going to go above and beyond, not just what their talent at base level allows them to do. I want someone who's extremely involved. I want someone who's extremely cooperative. I want all these other things because I have to pay you $50 million a year. And remember how taxes work, guys. You might not see that just because you get paid $70 million. They have to actually pay you that amount of money. You're not going to see it all, but they have to actually write the check and that money is to leave their account. And do you want to pay someone like Luka Doncic 5 years, $345 million, if you feel like every year he just kind of punts on the first 20 to 30 games of the season because he has to play his way back into shape because he didn't put in a lot of time in the offseason? Again, this Joel Embiid, we talk about this all the time, even in other sports. Just because the CBA was a certain way, and just because guys, everyone's in a position to now make a whole bunch of more money, and everyone's going to keep getting rich and rich and rich, they don't want to be the Philadelphia 76ers owner paying Joel Embiid all this money. And if you didn't see the graphic this weekend, Joel Embiid, if he doesn't turn it around this season and play a significant amount of games, he's going to almost go 50-50 in terms of games played and games missed. No one wants to pay $60 million for a guy who's going to give them 50-50. People aren't going to want to pay Luka or James Harden during the end of his Houston stint when he wasn't fully committed. You're not going to want to pay these guys $50, $60, $70 million. That's insane. And they're not going to be totally committed. That's why that trade, we all saw the number, by going from the Mavericks to the Lakers. And I think this is a true point of ownership. And all these owners talk. Don't get it confused. All these owners talk. All these owners are listening to each other. All these owners there's only a handful of people to take advice from. And when they all sit down in the same room, they don't want to pay. Luka lost out on $100 million by being traded from the Mavericks to the Lakers. And you could say maybe long-term it'll be great for his career, et cetera, whatever. He could potentially make it more ad money or a bigger star in Los Angeles versus Dallas. But $100 million is the difference. Over $100 million is the difference in the deal between him signing a supermax with Dallas or signing a max with LA. The owners don't want to pay these guys that much money and them only be half-assed about their job. Remember, this is a job. And it's why it was always, out of all the unfair things LeBron's ever been criticized for, his contracts are number one on that list. LeBron, yes, does he always get a max contract? 1,000%, and he always deserves it. And he doesn't request trades. He plays out his contract. He commits to it, not just in the offseason, not just during the season, but in the offseason, the amount of money he spends on his body. He is 1,000% committed to being the best NBA player that he can. And a lot of these guys aren't built like that. A lot of these guys, it's a job. They're really good at it. And that's what they do. And if that's what the Dallas Mavericks feel like Luka was turning into, a Joel Embiid, kind of there, kind of not, misses too many games, not in shape, then I get why they traded him. I 1,000% get it. And again, to our player point, Anthony Davis is not a scrub. Let's move to the last part, which I think has a lot of people frustrated, myself to some degree included, which is the fans angle in this. And yes, fans, the reality is you put a lot of time, money, energy, and emotion into these sports teams, and the reality is you make no difference. You could support, and they'll still trade your favorite player. You could support, and they'll still move to a new city. All that stuff is true. But where I think fans, and even some executives now, as they're in this position and it's their job and their livelihood, why was the only option for the Mavericks, or do they feel like the only option was, oh, I got to trade him to the Lakers for Anthony Davis? Yes, Anthony Davis is a superstar. Anthony Davis is an all-time great player. Anthony Davis is a champion. All that stuff is true. Anthony Davis, if I'm worried that Luka Doncic is injury prone or not in the best shape or whatever it may be, all those factors apply to AD as well. AD misses games. There's been questions about his career of AD's conditioning. They've been better since he's been in LA, but those questions have existed. They've been there. Like, what are we doing? And it is frustrating. Now, we understand human beings. Some guys are going to want to live in New York, or they're going to want to live in LA, or they're going to want to live in Chicago, or they're going to want to live in Miami. And because they have access to such otherworldly incomes, those are fun for them. And that's valid. And I get it. And I think for the most part, fans get it. But it is frustrating when you feel like, so if we don't just draft the guy who we then have to hope is just one of those unique players like a Giannis and a Tim Duncan who are just willing to stay where they're at, we're just never going to have these opportunities. Like, what do the Lakers do? I saw this. This has been trending last 48 hours. The Lakers just find a way to fail to success. And this infuriates a lot of fans, and I think it even infuriates some executives. The Lakers haven't done much right in the history of their franchise. The number one thing they did, moved to LA. Minneapolis Lakers, now the LA Lakers. That's it. Wilt was there, wanted to go to LA. Magic, there's funny things with the draft. That's how they got back-to-back number one overall picks. They got Magic Johnson, signed him to the worst contract in sports history, which is now illegal. 25 years, $25 million. They get, by Kareem forcing his way, wanting to go to LA for really no apparent reason. You get Shaq, who just forces his way to LA. Again, Kobe, in a way that would not work anymore. Oh, I'm going to tell Charlotte I'm going to go play for Italy. If you said that now, they would look at him and say, we'll see you in training camp, bud. And then you go through post-Kobe. You're dysfunctional throughout most of Kobe's tenure. You get Shaq, you get titles. Dysfunctional Kobe, can't get to the playoffs. Then you get Powell, get 2 more titles. Then you get the end of Kobe's career. No really good or great players around him besides Pau Gasol. Then you get the post-Kobe, dysfunctional, one of the worst records in the league. And LeBron just wakes up and goes, I want to go to LA. And because of his agency and friendships and Anthony Davis also being there, now it's like, Anthony Davis, we're going to force you to LA. Like, this franchise just fails up. And that's frustrating. Because we'd like to think in sports that your success, we all know circumstances matter. Like, we all know trust fund kids exist. We all know you could just be born into a certain family and you're going to have an easier life or a better life than if you're born to another family. But it is frustrating when that's right in your face. The Lakers were finally doing okay on their own merit, kind of. They bring J.J. Redick, who's kind of their guy. You know, Austin Reeves is a draft pick. Connect's a draft pick. They just shipped out D'Angelo Russell. LeBron and AD finally have a good rhythm going. And now we're just going to go, well, now you have Luka Doncic, who, if he gets his weight under control and decides he wants to be that guy, you now just failed into a top 5 player, top 3 player in the NBA? Okay. And yet you have teams out here like Sacramento has to trade away De'Aaron Fox because they've got their own cap situations or their own team situations where they can't hold on to them. And the Lakers are just given superstars. And I do think fans are the same way fans are growing impatient and angry with how the Dodgers are spending in baseball. I think these last 48 hours since they were just given Luka, I saw a tweet, I'll end it on here. I saw a tweet and it was Victor Wembanyama in a Lakers jersey and just said #soon. And the reality that a lot of fans looked at that and went, you know what? Probably right. It probably is just inevitability that we are 20 of the 30 teams are just holding spots to help develop other teams' future all-stars. And that's unfortunate. A lot more stuff to talk about. Obviously, there's a football game on Sunday, in case anyone hasn't heard. We're going to talk one more NBA trade that I think is indicative of the future of the NBA, as well as Tony is going to stop by after the break. A lot more to talk about. This is HardFoul Radio. We will be back momentarily. this is definitely a case of expectations. There is no expectations. Drake Mace, we can go out there. He can throw the ball around. Even though he's throwing game-ending interceptions, it doesn't matter. Caleb Williams, who has played some of the best, worst football ever, like, he's not throwing interceptions, and so his passer rating still looks good. Some of the things that he's doing, but he's also not throwing touchdowns. He wasn't really giving the explosive plays. I understand the coaching in Chicago has been a shit show all year. They obviously they've been firing more and more people. They did retain Thomas Brown, though, to be the head coach. So we'll see where this goes. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody joining me. So obviously the Luka trade took a lot of the noise the last 24 to 48 hours. But the trade that I think genuinely is it's the future, right? And that is De'Aaron Fox traded from the Kings to the Spurs. Now, De'Aaron Fox had already talked about, there's already been rumors about him wanting out and all these other things he wanted. He had personally even said, like, I'm not saying I fully want out of Sacramento, but I do want to see progress, and I want to see us heading for the right direction, and I want to see improvements. This, though, going to San Antonio, he is the first of many. It's easy to see when you have a player like Victor Wembanyama, the kind of gravity that he is going to take, the kind of where he is going to fit into the overall basketball landscape. He's 7'5", can shoot threes, and that initial concern, which I think we got over pretty quickly, of is his body going to be sustainable, because we've never seen someone this tall. Obviously doesn't have like a frame like a Shaq or Dwight or Embiid, where he's like just clearly just huge person, but he's taller than we've ever seen play the game consistently before, and his skill set is just, it's unfair. We see him like he's out there blocking Giannis, he's hitting logo threes. He is going to be the guy. At some point, this team is going to be the team that is, you just acknowledge, the same way we gave LeBron LeBron's on your team, you got a chance to win a title pass. Wembanyama is going to be that for the next generation. And so De'Aaron Fox going there now, especially because I know they have CP3 there, but like Chris Paul's obviously this is either his last year or second to last year, like he's on the way out. This is the team that a lot more stars are going to start gravitate to, because they have the star. They have the son of the NBA's new solar system in Victor Wembanyama. So you get De'Aaron Fox first. You're going to start, you got Castle, who they've decided is untouchable, quote unquote. I don't know if we believe anyone's untouchable after this weekend. And you're going to see more and more and more guys, other elite guards who want to have more space, especially shooting type guards who want to have more space, because Wembanyama is going to demand X amount of attention. And now you've got De'Aaron Fox as ball handler, who is going to be able to get guys involved as well. This is just the start of it. And everything San Antonio is doing just feels right. They brought in the vet to help spearhead the start of this. They're now acquiring more talent. They're not trading away the farm like other teams have done in the past with uniquely talented 22, 23-year-olds. They are taking it slow. They're letting it develop at his pace. And he is going to be one of the 3 to 5 best players within the next year. And then after that, by year 4, what's his ceiling? Best, at worst case, second best player in the league. Jokic is about to be leaving his prime. Embiid's hurt too much to be still considered in his prime. LeBron will be retired. KD and Steph most likely either be retired or on their way out. Remember, these guys who are all 35 plus years old, like, their time is coming. Like, this is the future of the NBA, and the future is Wembanyama. So, De'Aaron Fox is the start, or Chris Paul was the start. Get a veteran in there, continue to draft, don't trade away the farm, and now you get De'Aaron Fox, who wanted to be there. You're going to get more players who are going to want to be there. You keep putting talent around Wembanyama, and then it's just going to be a matter of, we're going to get to a point with him and this team where it's, how many? Because they're going to start winning. They're going to start winning a lot. And we're just going to go, how many? And this is all with Still in the building. I know he's had health issues. The greatest coach in NBA history in Greg Popovich. So De'Aaron Fox is the start, but it's only going to get more and more crazy. Only more and more guys are going to start coming there, and we're going to start asking ourselves, how many titles is Victor Wembanyama going to end his career with? And with that, we are joined by, once again, as always on Monday, Tony is here, standing in at 6'1", 227 pounds. Yeah, that might be different than yesterday, but my man works out, so he's good.
Hey,
How we
hey.
doing? How we doing today, bro?
Uh, Another day, woke up blessed, so keep it moving.
Lakers got another superstar by doing absolutely nothing, right? It's a wonderful day in the world.
You telling me?
I want to ask this. So obviously, Luka to the Lakers is going to be it's insane just because we're on Super Bowl week, but it's going to obviously be one of the big stories. I took to start to show a couple different angles here. One of which is ownership angle, and that is if someone like Luka, who's in the prime, even if he's got weight problems, the prime of his life, the prime of his career, is as good theoretically as anybody currently playing in basketball. If he can get traded, technically, I mean, it's up in the air for anybody, especially
Right.
these guys who are available for that super max. There's just been this thought that, oh, these guys are going to keep making more and more and more money. But even though these billionaires that own the team, they are looking, an almost $500 million commitment is still a lot of money. And so if it's not just this, oh, you can just, be, if Luka's got weight issues and that concerns you, like that is going to deter teams from wanting to throw that amount of money at you. And as more guys become eligible for that, Luka, Wembanyama's deal is going to be crazy here in a couple of years. I think there's going to be owners who are pushing back on that, and they're not just going to want to hand over everybody $300+ million. Hell, the Celtics did it, and then they sold the team, or in the process of selling the team. Like they got two $300 million guys, and they're like, and we don't want to keep paying for this. So I think owners, you're going to see more and more of this of like, you're not going to be able to do the half-ass stuff just because you're crazy talented. Like you're going to have to earn these 350, 400, $450 million contracts. Your thoughts?
Uh, I mean, like, you look at the NBA as a whole, and these contracts are only going to get bigger and bigger. And the standard is like the standard for a superstar when we talking like super maxes is 300.
Hmm.
So to not want to commit that to a Luka for various reasons, I don't think it's a sign of like what teams are going to do in the future. Just because I think everything's an outlier. Every situation is specific. As they say, situations are situational. So so for him, he's not looking at that supermax because of the weight issues and maybe some personal situations in Dallas that we just don't know about at the moment.
Hmm.
In the future, I don't think we'll run into this again. And I do think that for the most part, if another team values you in a certain way, that if another team values you in a certain way, then the contract isn't just like, okay, we're moving it, or no, we're not going to pay this guy because the the way the trade went down is like, okay, it's very unique in a sense. The team that traded for Luca is like only this team, like this only something this weird would involve the Lakers. It's similar to the Chris Paul thing. When you
Yeah.
if we were to go back then and think about that trade that got nixed. Like that would have been one of the like that kind of is equivalent to this.
Yeah.
Chris Paul then may not be what Luka is now. And that's an argument for a different day because you could argue he was better. But
Top five, top 10 esque player, true superstar, and it's like that guy getting that level of player being traded.
it's like unheard of. So
Mhm.
I would say this is the exception, not the rule.
No, that could be valid. There's obviously again a lot of the angles. I think for the Mavericks, I'm confused. I'm not going to say it can't work because there's just if you just go pure talent, like and guys always have to say this, like pure skill, pure talent. Kyrie and AD are clearly towards the highest end of the league, just pure talent basis. And so I'm not going to say a team with them can't work. And at the same time, I think the Lakers still have other issues. Ironically, the Lakers' biggest issue is this year, like their offense hasn't been terrible, but their defense is bad. And you just traded away by far your best defensive player. Will they still make the playoffs? Most likely. And at just this point, I'm not willing to put much past LeBron. Like he's just a walking anomaly. Talk about a situation being unique. But I will say this though, with not just that trade, but the whole deadline. I put this in when I was texting you and Will yesterday. I like the fact the trade deadline right now has the league, which is probably the most exciting it's been in any 24, 48 hour span. It's about the younger guys. Like Kevin Durant was listed today as potentially taking phone calls on, and that story felt like it came and went. Like it was not held up. It wasn't talking points on Twitter. And I like that because as great as KD is, we need to have talking points past KD. He's over 35. Steph and the Warriors want everyone apparently, and they also want Giannis. Congrats, Warriors. We all do. I like the fact like you see De'Aaron Fox going to San Antonio, Luka to LA, even Zach LaVine being traded to Sacramento. Like we're getting some buzz around some of these guys who aren't the mainstay names that we've had for these last several years. And I think that's a good place for the league.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask you personally, do the Celtics need to make a move, or are you standing totally pat?
No, they don't have to make a move. If they do, like, cool, but it's also a matter of what assets do they have to give up and what do they and should they give up. I think that acquiring some more functional size would help. Because obviously Kristaps has his injury issues. Al's up there in age, still super productive, defensively and offensively, but he's an older guy. And over the past few playoff stretches the last few years, you've seen his legs kind of start to die out near the end, and the threes aren't falling as well. He has to do a little bit more because of the Kristaps injury potential. So it's always tricky there. I would say that in looking at how the team's constructed, they on their best day, they're the most dominant team in the league. On their worst day, they get out rebounded a lot. The threes are not falling. Tatum is struggling. Jalen Brown is struggling, vice versa. And it can just be rough for them. You saw that stretches yesterday against Philly. They was down 26 points. They came back to win, but you know, when the threes aren't falling and you're not defending at the highest level, and you're not necessarily winning the rebound battle, it can be tough. But I think these are things that can be worked around for them as we approach playoffs. Um, but I don't think they have to make a move. Would a move be good to make? Sure, for sure. But I don't think it has to be done though.
We'll get into obviously as we go forward here towards the NBA season more more basketball topics, but there's a football game on Sunday. Now we were going to discuss a little bit. We ran out of time yesterday on group chat. I think you and I are in the same boat, which is that we both agree what Patrick Mahomes is doing is incredible. It's all time. And if he gets the first ever three-peat, like that's an amazing accomplishment. All-time player, obviously. To already be this young into his career, which I think gets lost on people, that like we know narratives now, but like even Brady, Manning, some of these guys weren't settled to where they are at this point in their career. But even if they three-peat, the idea that Mahomes is like this close to Brady, I think the world's lost their mind. Even if he wins on Sunday, he would have to do almost the exact same thing from 30 to 38 to catch Brady. Brady still has almost double his playoff wins. It would go to 18-35, which 35 is an insane fucking number. 18 to 35 if he wins on Sunday. It'll go 7-4. And then obviously the yards and stuff, like obviously Patrick's first 7 years are crazier, but the NFL is a different sport. But he would have to do it then this terms of winning, this level of winning, he'd have to repeat it. And this is unparalleled as is. Like, do you think it's valid? And like, where are you on the Mahomes Brady conversation? And do you think this makes it like this close if he gets the three-peat, which a lot of people are talking about?
This is why I always am sure when we talk about Mike and LeBron, when we talk about any other sports topic as it relates to this. This is why I'm always sure to differentiate the best from the greatest. Because if you feel like Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback of all time at this moment, even that's perfectly fine because you can back that up based on what you've seen with your eyes. You can back that up based on the play that you've seen at a super high level for 7 years straight. To say he's the greatest is incomplete, and it's just not true. And he doesn't become the greatest if he wins 4 championships. Brady was not the greatest when he won 3 championships. He had to win 4 to be the greatest because Joe Montana had 4. And then to solidify that, he had to have the stats. He had to continue to put up stats and win at a high level. For Mahomes, this is a situation of you either operate optimistically, you operate pessimistically, or you're just a wait and see. For me, I tend to lean wait and see. I tend to lean that way. On certain days, I could go either way. And I say that because you're leaning optimistically in Patrick Mahomes versus Tom Brady if you feel that Mahomes is going to keep up this level of play until he's 40 years old. He's going to keep doing this until he's 40 years old. If he wants to play that long. You're also assuming he wants to fucking play football that long. So, on the other end of that, you're leaning on it pessimistically if you feel like no way Mahomes can do this. This is going to stop eventually. You're actually probably right in the middle. Me personally, I look at this and say Patrick Mahomes could never make another Super Bowl after Sunday. He could never make another Super Bowl after Sunday. He could play until he's 37, 38 years old. That's another 10 to 11 years. At that point, if he doesn't do that, then this conversation is for nothing because he's not the GOAT. He's just not. You can still make the best argument because the play was such at a high level. But the GOAT conversation matters when we're talking accolades, when we're talking statistics, when we're talking longevity. That is where it's a losing battle. And to finish this up, Brady Brady did this until he was 43 years old. 44, was he 45 actually? I might be
Yeah.
fucking shortcutting. He's like 45. Brady did this for a long time at a very high level. He went what, 10 years between Super Bowl wins? In
Hmm.
the midst of that, he lost two. Patrick Mahomes has already lost one to Brady. Say he loses Sunday, he's 3-2 in Super Bowls. This changes so much.
Oh yeah.
And it changes so much if he's 3-2 in the Super Bowl and he's lost, he loses the Philly rematch. And then and I know how this works. Like we are in a world where if he loses Sunday, then the Super Bowl win from 2 years ago gets reexamined. And then that gets looked at as well. They barely won, and it was the pass interference call on Bradbury that shouldn't have been called, and blah 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 blah. And then from there, that is going to start a conversation about all of his Super Bowl wins. Well, if Garoppolo hits Kittle down the field on that pass, then they lose that game. He lost to Brady in the second, blah, 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 blah. And it's going to keep going. If Dre Greenlaw doesn't get hurt and San Francisco, they wouldn't so if he wins Sunday, he's 4-1 in Super Bowls, 4 Super Bowl championships before 30 years old, and the first three-peat in NFL history. Everything is going to be on his side. If he loses, the narrative changes. I say we can operate in the middle and wait and see. We don't have to try to predict what's going to happen, but we can also in the present recognize Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. That is not a conversation. That's just the facts.
Yeah. That's it's and I'm on the side of you have to have that second act. And this is kind of throughout all of sports. Baseball's a little different because the guys who are considered like the greatest baseball player, we don't view winning the same way because early baseball, like you're never gonna tie like the rings like the 1920 Yankees did. They won. They're like Russell's Celtics were like the one 8 out of 9 years, and they all played for 20 plus seasons. But in the NFL, NBA, like that second act of your career is so huge. The second act of Mike's career, if you want to call it that, the year and a half gap, he three-peated again. And that is a huge reasoning for his GOAT argument. The second half of LeBron's career, is we've never seen this for this long, and that's his GOAT argument. Brady's real GOAT argument is in his second act. It's not the first 3 out of 4 years. Then we had you got the 3 out of 4 Super Bowls, then you got the 2007 undefeated season, and then you also have 4 consecutive AFC Championship games, get another 4-3 at the end of your career. And then you went on, in Brady's case, a third act, and he went to Tampa and was still great, borderline league MVP, and wins another Super Bowl. So, yes, I'm probably more on I'm Chiefs #1 hater. All that's good and well, and that'll be me until the day I'm no longer here. But I can also recognize, yes, if he wins on Sunday, what he does is he keeps himself in the conversation. And narratively speaking, he will be the only guy that will hey, if anybody was going to catch Brady, it would be him. Similar to when LeBron entered that space. And it's if anyone is going to catch the scoring record, it's going to be him. If anyone is going to catch Mike, it's going to be him. That's the kind of combo Sunday would put him in. With all that being said, I'm definitely rooting for them to lose, but that's just me.
I respect it.
All that means, I give the props, credit, all that stuff. That's all good and well. The fan in me, now I hope y'all lose. I need another Tampa Super Bowl. Lose 31-9. Last thing before we get you out of here. What do you think? And speaking of the your prediction for the game. But I'll say, who do you think is actually set up better going forward, even post the game? The Eagles obviously have the better roster, and a lot of their roster is still really young. Jalen Hurts is still young. Versus the Chiefs, who, while we all acknowledge this is the dynasty right now, we also all acknowledge Kelsey is older. They still haven't found, if you believe Rashee Rice is that guy, fine, but they haven't found the clear next receiver. They're gonna start having more transitions going to the second act. So two-parter. Your prediction on the game, and then who do you actually like going forward more, Eagles or Chiefs?
Eagles for sure. When we talk about going forward, better. It's a better roster, set up better. It's a younger roster for sure. And I think that the infrastructure to keep that going is better. I don't know what the Chiefs will look like when Reed retires. They haven't had to worry about it, but I trust how. I think the Eagles win. Like I said, I picked the Eagles. I picked this Super Bowl before the season. I picked the Eagles to win a rematch just because I think the talent would just win out. I'm perfectly fine being wrong if home. It comes a point where talent wins out. This is how this goes. And when you look at this Eagles roster, if Hurts' knee is just 80%, they have a advantage there. They don't have the advantage at quarterback, but they have the advantage from a complete team standpoint. And that's not to disrespect Spags' defense, but when you look at the Eagles' offensive line, look at the way they're able to run the ball, look at the receivers they have, this sets up for them to win. Will they win? I cannot say that, but I do think they will. And I think that the better roster just wins. I just think the better roster wins.
I agree. I'm not predicting the same score or style, but there's a lot of me, and not even trying to be a hater, but there's a lot of me that feels okay, we know the better quarterback. We know the better, high. I believe wholeheartedly AJ Brown in 2025 is better than Travis Kelce. I also think Travis Kelce just does some wildly incredible stuff in the playoffs, so I'm going to give him that respect. But it feels to me a lot of when Denver went in 2013, and then you would have said against young Russell Wilson, yes, we knew about the Legion of Boom, but it wasn't, that Super Bowl really solidified them as an all-time defense because of what they did. And that game obviously turned route immediately, and it was over by the first play. But that's kind of the feel I'm getting. Mahomes obviously the better quarterback. I think from an explosive, I think the Chiefs can be more explosive, and that's more of a Jalen Hurts discredit. But Saquon, that defense. I think Jalen Carter, if you out there gambling and you want like a low-key Super Bowl MVP, I could absolutely see him getting in there for like 2 to 3 sacks, like a crazy forced fumble, like that kind of play. Yeah, I got Eagles. I'm going 27-21. I just A, I want this
seems
fuckery
right.
to A, I want this fuckery to end, and B, I just believe they're the better team. So with that being said, though, appreciate you as always for coming on, man. We're gonna catch you group chat on Sundays, and then obviously every Monday. Appreciate you, bro.
Yep. Peace.